It is also not good enough to stand on the world stage and take the bouquets for the formation of the GNU if you are unwilling to domestically put in the hard yards that are required to make coalitions work. Under the GNU now, it is time for a reset that treats all parties to the GNU as key players in the
Guys, it seems that South Africa is about to be at the forefront of the war against Donald Trump's golden era for the United States. So we saw that this week in Davos, President Ramaphosa, especially in the words of a really interesting article I saw on the Daily Maverick, that actually argued that President Ramaphosa has placed South Africa firmly in the camp of the diminishing progressive world. You could hear President Ramaphosa speak about what actually already in a week, in about 5 days into Trump's presidency, seems like an old world. You know that Donald Trump wants to really kick out wokeism, and I'll be doing an analysis on Milei, the president of Argentina, had a really explosive speech at Davos. Here, I'll be doing a video on that. But you know, President Donald Trump actually wants to get rid of wokeism, wants to get rid of the whole DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, what we might call today part of what seems like the BEE kind of like policies in South Africa. And he wants to really get rid of all that leftist rhetoric, reducing corporate tax in the US to really low. He wants all production capacities to come to the United States, arguing that this is going to be the really golden age of the US. Actually, 2 days ago, I read that there was a rift between the US and Colombia. So, in the raid now against illegal migrants in the United States, President Donald Trump actually there was I think a deportation attempt of some Colombians back to Colombia. And the president of Colombia wouldn't allow that plane from the US land. And immediately Donald Trump actually sought to put tariffs, increase tariffs on Colombian products being sent to the US. And so these are pure economic intelligent moves that Donald Trump really understands. And I think in I think hours or so, the president actually now had to send his own military plane or something like that, or presidential plane to take those refugees. So this is actually the world we are beginning to see. We are seeing a kind of like world with the emergence of the US being bullish in its move to really, set the world in a much more libertarian kind of like atmosphere with the US hegemony, where productionist and capitalist ideologies actually would be paving the way for the future, at least for his tenure in office, probably for the next 4 years. And I think there was an argument that they might even have, I think there's a court, proceeding that wants to push if his term he can have a two regime, so to speak. And so we might be talking about another 8 years of pure capitalist incursion on the world. And when you listen to President Ramaphosa at Davos, you could hear him still speak about how the world has to really be, kick out isolationism, nationalism, still have to have a much more progressive sort of like cooperative mantra. Those are the kind of words that Donald Trump doesn't even want to hear at this moment. And so it was really interesting that, DA leader here, Steenhuisen, called him out for telling lies to the world, where he was actually praising the Government of National Unity, GNU, and praising South Africa for achieving what many countries in the north has not been able to achieve in just 4 days. Let's quickly listen to what Steenhuisen actually argues that President Ramaphosa called a lie in front of the world, and I'll be back for this analysis.
And this cooperation culture and the approach that we have developed over many years has taken us to a higher level. And with the establishment, particularly of the Government of National Unity that you referred to, following the elections that were held in May last year, the Government of National Unity, or the GNU as we call it, made up of 10 political parties, a government that we were able to set up in exactly 4 weeks, when many other countries, particularly in the global north, take up to 1 year, and we did it in just 30 days. So this has been vital to stability, as well as inclusive governance in our country, and has largely contributed to greater interest amongst investors in South Africa's economic prospects. And I do believe that some of those investors who are having a fresh look at South Africa are also here, and we are going to be interacting with them.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's really tricky how to really assess what's going on now. It actually appears, I saw a comment that says that it actually appears that the reality of MK, EFF, ANC coalition seems close, because now that John Steenhuisen wants to pursue a reset according to clause, is it clause 12? Or one of the clauses in the statement of intent, it's really tricky. You know, if the DA pulls out of the GNU now, and now that we do not have what has been seen as, this kind of opposition politics, so to speak. There's no opposition politics anymore. I don't really see an official opposition as the DA operated, although now the MK actually prides itself as the official opposition in the country, but I don't really see an official opposition politics in South Africa going forward, except the DA would now step out of the GNU and really mount on its supporters. But now even its supporters are getting tired of supporting the DA, and I really don't know how it would be if the DA, especially in the words of John Steenhuisen, pursues a reset, and if the ANC doesn't agree for a reset, if the DA leaves the GNU, the only viable option I see is a Cape independence movement that's actually really taking root at the moment. I think I'm making a video as well. I think I saw an interview with Alec Hogg and the Cape Independence leader there. I don't remember his name, but I think the Cape Independence thing would actually be the next viable move, which I think many former supporters of the DA would largely probably want to wish. And it will really be an unfortunate move if we actually see a secessionism going on in South Africa, as we see in West Africa, and the likes of Biafra that was attempted in the 70s. We've seen the Casamance in Senegal, we've seen Azawad, we've seen Ambazonia in Cameroon. It wouldn't really be nice to see that eventuality in South Africa. But anyway, let's quickly listen to John Steenhuisen actually make his case for what might seem as a pursuit of a reset that might lead to, abandoning the GNU, and probably what happens then, what the next move will be is really not clear yet. But then we really hope for the best for South Africa. Let's quickly to listen to Steenhuisen actually make his case, and share your thoughts in the comments.
In the correspondence that I addressed to the President, I made a number of constructive proposals for consideration, because as a Democratic Alliance, we want universal access to basic health care for all South Africans, regardless of their income. However, the NHI in its current form, which seeks to destroy private medical aids and tax credits, and to launch an assault on the private medical sector, is not the way to go. If anything, Operation Vulindlela has shown us over the last few years, it is indeed a public-private partnership and cooperation that leads to greater successes in government. I made a number of these constructive proposals which set out very clearly our position on the matter, and I asked for a meeting with the President to further engage ahead of the upcoming Cabinet Lekgotla to prevent a repeat of the events from the previous Lekgotla, where we vehemently objected to the inclusion of the NHI targets in the documentation. Amazingly, the President refused to even meet with the leader of the largest party in the coalition to discuss the single most critical issue for the future of the GNU and for the future of South Africa. Instead, my letter was simply waved away and sent into the abyss of the Health Department. And that leads me to the next point, because the same place my letter was sent to has been met with a really odd response. Instead of engaging respectfully and maturely to find solutions, the ANC Minister of Health, Aaron Motsoaledi, declared war on the GNU in front of the world at Davos this week. Motsoaledi told world leaders assembled at the World Economic Forum that he is fighting what he called a war against the people of South Africa who don't want their private medical aids expropriated and who don't want higher taxes to fund a new looting scheme and who don't want to see our healthcare system in South Africa destroyed. This is not how mature colleagues behave, that is not how you negotiate, and that is not how you compromise. It is arrogant and it is deeply disrespectful, not only to the Democratic Alliance, but to the other parties, to the Government of National Unity, who have also expressed their concerns about the NHI and who are also patiently waiting for a negotiation around this particular matter. It is a symptom of a continued lack of respect accorded to coalition partners as well as to the founding agreement. And most importantly, from international experience and local experience, this is not how healthy coalitions work. Whether the ANC likes it or not, the stability of this government, as well as the security of the President's own position, depends entirely on the relationship between the two largest parties to the Government of National Unity. In keeping with our mature approach to coalition government, the Democratic Alliance is therefore urgently seeking to pursue a reset in this relationship. To do so, I yesterday wrote directly to President Ramaphosa to do the following things: to object in the strongest possible terms to the fact that he simply signed the Expropriation Act this week in contravention of a clear legal opinion and concerns submitted by the Minister of Public Works that the Act is in fact unconstitutional and could quite easily be remedied by sending it back to Parliament. Secondly, to note the DA's implacable opposition to the inclusion of the NHI, and particularly the proposals to start to move to eliminate private medical aid and the continued assault on the private healthcare sector in South Africa contained in the documentation of the Medium-Term Development Plan, with, of course, the accompanying budgetary implications of this. Bear in mind again, we are in government to see economic growth and job creation and an end to poverty in South Africa. Every policy, every law, every initiative by government should be measured through the lens of the following things. Will this help grow the economy? Will it create jobs? And will it help lift more South Africans out of poverty? And finally, to record the failure to set up of now an effective dispute resolution mechanism, as well as the clear abuse of the clearinghouse mechanism, which still does not have adopted terms of reference going forward. But most importantly, I notified the President that I was now invoking Section 19 of the Statement of Intent. Clause 19 was specifically put in place to deal with situations where disagreements within the coalition arose. Clause 19 codifies the procedure to be followed when differences arise between parties to the Government of National Unity. Clause 19.3 states, and I quote, "Sufficient consensus exists when parties to the GNU representing 60% of seats in the National Assembly agree," unquote. The only parties that represent 60% of the seats in the National Assembly are the African National Congress and the Democratic Alliance. In the event of a lack of sufficient consensus, the Statement of Intent in Clause 20 continues, the parties to the GNU should also establish dispute resolution or deadlock breaking mechanisms in instances where sufficient consensus is not reached. The President needs to accept, along with his party, that the ANC does not have a majority in South Africa. They are now just another minority party, and that the DA are partners in the GNU. We won over 3.5 million votes in the last election, and we are in government to represent our voters and to rescue South Africa by growing the economy and creating jobs and ending poverty. If we cannot fulfill this mandate within the GNU and are treated merely as a doormat or treated as simply there to make up the numbers, we have to seriously consider our next steps. The DA, and I want to be very clear about this, the DA will not be reduced to being mere spectators in a government of which we bring a large part of the seats. I want the people of South Africa to know that the DA does not take this step lightly. We understand the grave implications, not only for politics, but for the future of governance in South Africa. The seriousness of this situation demands that we do engage other parties in the GNU too, who, like us, have publicly come out against the acts of the recent week, and particularly the IFP, who have now come out very strongly against the Expropriation Act too. We are invoking Clause 19 in pursuit of an urgent reset in the relations, because South Africa deserves a functioning coalition where partners treat each other with respect in pursuit of the solutions to the country's many pressing problems. The solutions must work to undo the failed policies of the past 30 years and set South Africa sailing on a new path of hope, prosperity, and opportunity for more South Africans. It is also not good enough to stand on the world stage and take the bouquets for the formation of the GNU if you are unwilling to domestically put in the hard yards that are required to make coalitions work. Under the GNU now, it is time for a reset that treats all parties to the GNU as key players in the decision-making processes of this government and the policies and practices that it will pursue. It is also a time for new policies and for a new direction for South Africa, away from the failed policies of the past, and that is precisely why the GNU was met with so much hope and excitement. And it's that hope and excitement that we wish to give a greater opportunity to through a reset in these relations. If the reset is not possible and we remain unable to be able to play our part in the growth and jobs agenda, if our ideas, if our solutions are merely waved away with the hand of the National Democratic Revolution, then we too will have to reconsider our options and how to best serve South Africa in this situation. It is my fervent hope that the coming week will see a coming together of the ANC and the DA, as well as the leaders of other parties, to adopt a far more cohesive, collaborative partnership towards governing South Africa and to implementing a new policy agenda that will bring the jobs we need, that will grow the economy in the way we need it to grow, and which will lift millions of our citizens out of poverty and into a new era of hope, opportunity, and prosperity. Thank you very much.